Wait for a minute. We've got to wait. I'm just reloading. I never know. Why is it not live?
Why? Tell
Why
me.
is it not? Is it live?
I can see
think
my
it's
face.
live.
On air. It says on air.
There we
it
are.
says free
Yeah,
comments.
we are. There we are. Yeah, look at that.
Can you guys hear me? Can people hear
Hello.
me? Can the internet
Hiya.
hear John Beech?
Yes. I think they can.
Yes.
Can they hear us? Yes, we did it.
Way! Okay, I can't see any comments, so I just have to
that's
trust
fine.
that you're saying the right things, Tom.
That's why I'm here. How are we sounding? How's John sounding? How am I sounding?
La, 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 la.
How are you all sounding?
Excellent, I hope.
Flawless intro. Happy birthday, Basket Snake. I saw it's your birthday.
Happy birthday,
On the
Buff Snake.
internet.
It was Snag's birthday the other day as well, a couple of days ago.
Oh my goodness, birthday
Snags.
session.
There's the camera. So many cameras.
John, I'm being told by Quietly Wrong to tell you that he loves you.
Aww. Your heart.
A lot of love, happy birthdays. Hello, Cam. Reddish Boat says he sounds great.
Yes.
Mr. Casey James says, don't tell John Beech I wrote this comment.
Oh no, it's too late.
Yeah, my goodness. Oh no, I've ruined it. Right.
Do you like my
Oh yes.
hastily assembled screen? I'm in my house, which is a building site, so I got a dust sheet and like stuck it up with some plasterboard stilts behind.
It's perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
It's
it also
perfect.
You can't quite see it, I don't think, on the stream, but like I can't. No, it's not going to work. It says something about Johnny B over there, and obviously that says
something
MM.
about Johnny. We should have mirrored your camera so that it read the right way.
Oh no!
Look at
Oh,
these
is it
things that we
backwards?
think of.
Oh,
Think of
see,
it.
I thought it was
Think
only
of it.
backwards for me.
Oh no, it's backwards for everyone.
Well, that's stupid.
Well, that's fine because you're going to disappear when you start moving.
No one can read what this says. It says backwards.
No.
Yes, no, it says the beach is back.
The beach is back. He is.
Yeah, see?
I'm sure
Here I
that
am.
T-shirt was designed specifically for this stream, right?
Yeah, just for the stream, yeah. Nothing else.
Just
Nothing
for
else.
this stream. Right. Let's, John. What are you planning on doing today?
So as a lot of people know, I started doing like a little wooden toy train thing a couple of months ago, but then since then a lot of things have happened. Obviously the ongoing global pandemic, which is terrible and upsetting, but also I moved house during all of that, and our house is just like one big building site, and I've been trying to get like the roof waterproofed and all that kind of stuff so we can live here nicely without,
as you do.
You know, as you do. So I haven't had much time for dreams at all in the last like 3 months. But this weekend I found some time and I managed to do some stuff on my little train game. And I thought it'd be really cool to show everyone, because it's got to a place now, it's like nowhere near done, but it's got some cool stuff and we can show you, and I can talk about some of the techniques I used and how I did it and that kind of stuff, and then perhaps we can make a piece or two today on stream, which we can add to the collection, and at some point, you know, we'll release it into the wild and people can make all their own wooden toy train fantasies a reality in you know, virtual reality, but not actual virtual reality, but you know what I mean.
Actually making dreams reality.
Dreams reality, that's the one.
Reality. I'm excited. You showed me a little bit of it earlier, and I'm excited for you to show everyone.
Let's
have a look.
Let's dive in. The architect. There we go. One day I'll be level 100. That'd be so good.
John, you're getting there. You're getting
I'm
there.
getting there. I'm working really hard.
The Dream Queen's like level 60, and I'm always like, oh, we should just boost her up to the level cap. So we should just have it. We should just have it so she's always like one level higher than Carriage.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's probably too high.
Right. Yeah. Let's have a look.
This is a bunch of the pieces, so I just thought I'd go through and explain some of them. Let's get rid of that, all that. So I've tried to make everything look like a. Fun fact: it's beech wood. Way, see?
Right. All these Easter eggs.
Easter eggs. But basically, I made all these pieces. Now the hardest thing was making the curve of the track relative to the length of the straight bits, such that when you sort of go around in a whole bunch of curves and you come back, it sort of all joins together. It was like a nightmare, like a mathematical nightmare. I'm telling you, Tom, it was so hard.
I hear you, John. I hear you.
So now I have a load of pieces, and you can see they're all like 1/6, 1/8. So it means like, you know, obviously you can combine 2 1/3s to make a 2/3 and stuff. It just means that basically using these, you can sort of form any length possible, pretty much, which is really good. But sometimes, if you're making these sort of track systems, when you work at 90 degrees, they always line up. Like 90 degrees is easy. If all your corners are 90 degrees, it's like working on a grid. It's super simple. But if you do 45, then grids are out of the window. So then I've got this piece over here, which is really handy. It can, if I turn the logic back on, it basically extends. So if you come across a piece where it's not quite the right size, you can. It's kind of cheating, but the reason this track works in reality is because these joints are really loose and you can just kind of like wiggle it into place. But we don't really have the luxury in Dreams. I mean, I could have done that, but it would have been so much logic, it would have probably made them too expensive. And I wanted them to be super cheap, so you could make really massive train sets, basically.
Yeah.
Got a whole bunch of pieces. They're all double-sided as well. And the grain on the other side is slightly different, basically. It means as you're going along, you can flip them over and make your
classic
own...
Dreams trick.
Yeah, classic Dreams trick. So it just sort of adds to the variety. Got these like plastic girders. My favourite bit about them is I've been putting the mould lines in them. Can you see going around the outside here?
Yeah.
Because, it's got to look like plastic. So I'll show how I do that trick later. It's really fun. It's a really fun trick.
A lot of people are a fan of your grain.
Oh, I do like a bit of grain.
It's good grain.
It's good grain. It's got textures where you can see it catches the light. It's actually 3-dimensional. And I've got all these different switches, which you can control when the train goes over. And there's a whole bunch. There's more to come. Little crossroads, turntable. Everyone loves a good turntable.
Yep. Oh man, the bigger pieces. Oh, so good.
Well, these are just combos of like those switches down there. This is just smaller bits joined together.
Yeah.
But I designed them in such a way that they would fit together like this, so you could do lots of cool, interesting things.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, let's dive in and actually see it in action.
Toy Baron asks, in this train set, are batteries included?
Oh, yes.
Free, man.
Battery free. I mean, as long as your PlayStation's not running off batteries, but that would be quite insane.
Yeah, true.
So this area we're in now, this is my test area. So every time I make a new bit of track, all I do is sort of like come in here and just add on to it. There's no sort of sense in the layout. It's just me just like, oh, now I've got a bridge, or now I've got a thing.
Yeah.
So I've got my little Mark 1 train, and this is the little prototype train, which I've been using to test everything. Yeah. And as you go over the switches, you just push in the direction you want to go as you travel over them, and then you can travel over it how you want. So let's have a sort of little explore and go around and have a look at some stuff.
Oh, that's so good.
And zoom in a little bit.
Yes. Look at it go.
And I like, you can sort of like do a 3-point turn, but with like a train with that switch there. Little turntable.
And your switch is controlled by the direction buttons, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this I'm pressing left and right on the analog stick here to make it go where I want it to go.
Gecko's asking, what's your camera rig right now?
It's basically just a cube that kind of follows you, and then there's a key in the level where that camera tries to look at. It's kind of obviously in a straight line from where the camera is, and it just follows you around, and kind of it's really simple. I'll load it up in a second, but before I do that, one last thing I want to do other than driving around the whole track is down here. This is my favourite piece. Loop to loop, and it's all. Now, what's really cool is it's just running on. This whole track system is running on physics. There's no ridiculously complex logic. Let's turn on the sort of, X-ray. So this would show you all the gadgets in the level, and you can see there's gadgets on the switches because obviously, but everything else is just pretty plain. Now the physics it's running on, to see that I've got to do the invisibility, and you can see it's this monorail system basically.
Yeah.
These orange things here are just helpers, so because everything works on the grid, when you rotate these around, they basically end up at 45 degrees, like this one's here, then that one's a 45 degree on this one. So to make sure you rotate at the right angle, you just grab it by the helper point, and then you can make sure it always lines up really nicely. It's just little helper widgets and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the really interesting thing about this is like some serious technical stuff here for anyone who wants to attempt to do this. When I built this track, and I just built, like, it's all nicely on grid, everything lines up, and I built this, say this blue one here, this monorail here, in one piece, and the train would go around it perfectly, like left to right, but would never work right to left. It was really confusing. I couldn't figure it out. It was very bumpy. It was like judder every time, and I was thinking maybe physics isn't going to be good enough. But it turns out, how do I explain this? Because this is on the grid, this piece here, imagine if this was pixels now. So if in fact, I can just probably get out this will help explain it. If I get this out and pixelate the screen a little bit, this will sort of help explain it. There we go. Yeah, that's useful. So see how at this end, it's almost smooth, even though it's pixelated, this too smooth. So the train would slip on at this end nicely and go around. But when it tried to come in on this end, you can see it's actually jaggedy, because the way our physics works under the hood is basically like lots of little balls and cubes based on the distance field, like voxels. So I realised that it wouldn't come on this end because it was hitting the jaggediness. So let's delete that now. So I had to make it out of two pieces. If I tunnel in, you can see that there's two pieces here that basically slide into each other. They're copies, but this one, the actual angle of it, if I go into it, you can see it's that way, and then I just nicely rotated it around, which actually rotates. So it's physics. So it's like the pixel grid is going this way now, which made it smooth from both directions. It took me ages to figure that out. That was like the hardest thing. Once I'd solved that, everything else sort of fell into place. So you can see any of the sort of curves. I've got these like double, just about sort of, I don't know how good the stream quality is, but that's how that works.
Yeah, so like even that ramp there has the same thing.
Everything that has like a bit of a curve on it or something like that. Like the loop to loop has double ones on it that go around and they blend into each other. Because the loop was, again, another mathematical nightmare, because it had to go straight here. You can see that bottom one goes straight up, and then at this point is when it starts curving halfway through. Yeah. But these bits, this bit, and so on and so forth, they're all clones of each other. They're all copies. To save thermometer, like if we open up the thermometer, you can see it's actually pretty cheap. So you can make a level 3 times more complex than this. If you use lots of big pieces, you can just make it massive. But graphics is pretty low, because I've been trying to do my best to save everything by using lots of duplicates, basically. Yeah, which is really helpful.
So it's easy to use. Amazing. How do you decide this is gonna be hard to say. How do you decide which direction a switch switches? Is it based on the direction the train faces?
Oh, so smart. Absolutely. So as you're going, it worked better on a three-way switch here. So if you go over it and you don't press anything, it will just go straight over it. If you go over it, and you can see the arrow on top of the train, and I push left now, it will go left. Or if I push right, it will go right. But if I'm driving it in reverse, the opposite is true, because it's like reversing a car. So now if I want to go left in reverse, I'm pushing right, if that makes sense. There goes the track.
Of course. Yeah. Oh no!
It was really important that you could actually come off the track. That was the main thing, because like if you want to have like a racing game, you want there to be some skill. If I could just floor it all the time, it'd be no fun. So like if you go too fast, like if I go over ramps or whatever, you can get little jumps and you may come off. So you've got to like feather the controller. A shout out to Peterfield as well, who gave me this really awesome technique. I wanted there to be like a little click every time it went over a join. You can just about hear it if you listen. And I thought I was going to have to use a key on everything, which would have like made everything like a lot more expensive. But Pete just says, just put a trigger zone underneath, which is looking for the label type of the object, and if it detects 2, it's clearly going over a join. So it was really cheap. It's just like one little trigger zone. So it's really cool to sort of think outside the box with things like that,
Goodness.
Oh, and then go.
No, you go. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
I was just going to say, and the other thing I've got here, just quickly turn on, is FPS mode, which is my favourite.
Oh yeah, you showed me this. Is so cool.
It's really fun because here it's very obvious. Like you push right to steer right here, you know, and left.
Yeah.
And I alter the field of view as you go. So if you're stopped, you can see it's focused just in front of you. You know, like a few inches or whatever the scale is in front of you. But as you accelerate, you actually focus on things on the background, and the field of view changes to just make it feel like you're going really fast. So if anyone's making a racing game, altering this sort of field of view and the depth of field focus point really helps sell that like acceleration and super speed.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can go loop to loop. So I intend to have like a whole bunch of gameplay, which is ones like this, like racing gameplay, and then others which is more like drive around with your crane and pick up bits of cargo and deliver it to the cargo station.
Yeah. So good, man. Dreaming Gamer was asking, and basically just said, where's it gone? Tom, please ask John why the hell this is so clean.
I don't know. Just I'm obsessive compulsive with details. Okay, like so. For example, here the bridge supports, and all these different ones, they can stack on top of each other. They've got the little slots in here, which would slot into the grooves here to hold it. Yeah. But they also have like the correct. Oh no, that's an old one. That must be an old one. Damn it, John. The one that I picked up.
Goodness me, John.
But it basically has. For some reason, this hasn't updated. On the other one, it's got slots inside to make sure that this slots onto the top of it. I'm actually not sure why that's not the case on that one. I think maybe I haven't updated and I've only got it in the other thing. Anyway, they all like join together. Yeah. And the fact that they're curved here is really important because usually you put them on the join like this. And so if I go, you know, they're supporting like a point where two bits of track join. If I just go down, you can see the curve is there in case it goes into a curved bit of track. Because if it was straight, it would intersect in there, you know, which is physically impossible. So, you know, I couldn't have that. That would just be disgraceful. I do my best. I do my best. And these bridges, these can be sort of extended as far as you want. Everything all nicely lines up on the grid. So, like the whole track works really nicely. So it's really fun to just like get stuff, move it around, and it works on like quite a coarse grid, so everything just, you know, will just line up nicely, which is really handy for, you know, making anything you want basically.
Tap says, did you model this on real pieces or just engineer it yourself? It's all you, isn't it?
I just engineered it myself. I just basically off the top of my head. I mean, obviously, like I know what wooden train sets look like, but other than that, I just kind of made it up as I went along. Figured out the John Beech style. Figured out the corner ratios.
So
okay,
good.
And then this is. Oh, keep going. Go.
No, Dice Man was asking. It's more about your sort of creative process. It was, hey John, when do you know this idea is good to make? Do you use placeholder graphics to map out the idea first, then detail, or do you go straight into detail after you come up with an idea?
It depends what I'm trying to make. In the case of this one, the tactility and the texture of the wood really fascinates me. I like making sort of realistic things. So I basically just started making really realistic little bits of wood and trains. After working on it for about a week, I realised that the maths wouldn't work with the corners, which was the thing I was saying about. So I had to just scrap it all and start again. So that was a mistake. And then after that, once I'd settled on the maths, in fact, you could sort of, if I went back through the version history of this, you would see where I had them all different colours, trying to figure it out. Yeah. Then I really started to go to town on all the details and everything, which is really fun. So now it's really fun because instead of trying to think of the whole thing in one go, I just make a little piece, which is perhaps what we're going to get to do today as well. Yeah. I just like, what would be a cool piece of wooden toy train set thing, modular thing, and then you can make it, and it's like a fun little like hour project to, you know, just make yourself like the switch or, you know, a straight piece or something, you know. It's really cool. Yeah. So this is great because this is one of the sort of levels or games that you can just keep adding to, and it's just fun every time you add something. It's not, you don't have to look at it as a whole, you can just look at it piece by piece, which is great, which I really like. Yeah. So talking of adding pieces, I'm just gonna in fact, let's just close you down a second. I'm going to add a piece. I'm going to add this piece. Power you on, and then unhide everything. It's turn off logic. So I've got, you know, all good trains pull a carriage, obviously. So
of course.
Let's put grid on bigger so I can move a bit faster.
Got an itchy ear.
Oh, nice.
Just gonna itch my ear. Just thought I'd let you know. In case you can hear some weird noises. Scratching my ear.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Therapeutic.
Good now. Yeah, oh,
ASMR. Yeah. Okay, so I've got my little train here. Again, I wanted to make everything super cheap.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to add any unnecessary logic. Because literally every tiny piece of logic you add, especially when you're doing a track like this or adding lots of items, is going to cost you loads. I didn't, because the idea is, just so everyone knows, I'm going to give this kit away when it's done, so everyone can make what they want. So I wanted it to be really cheap, so people could make massive train sets, but then still build their level they want it to be in, or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so trains are really cheap, and to cut down on logic, they actually, much like the train track, I'm just going to add a whole bunch here.
This is actually going to answer a question from Bella a minute ago.
Sure.
Could you add a whole line of train cars?
Oh
my goodness.
Just delete those. I mean, I could...
don't even add too many. Goodness me.
Now, the fun thing is, this is literally just using the physics of that hook and eye that you see there. I mean, quite literally, it's that. And it's pretty reliable. So this camera comes around. And it's actually pulling... So now I can't go as fast. I'm literally like full throttle now. But like it's struggling to pull all the trains, which is, you know...
Ah, it's so good!
Ridiculously...
so good!
So they just happily trundle around. And I even like it when you... I have to sort of
the chat is just now like, whoa!
Wait. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. When you stop, it's really nice because of the physics. You see the trains bunch up and pull apart there, which is really nice. Sort of travelling down.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh my goodness.
I've added. I don't know how many.
People want you to do the loop.
20. Oh yeah. I've tried. It sort of gets like halfway up and just goes, and it comes out. You can do it with about 2, which we're doing a bit. Let's add some more.
A couple of questions, including one from Abby.
Hello, Abby.
About how you made the wood grain.
Oh yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we're totally going to make a piece today, and we go over how I did the wood grain and perhaps the plastic as well, because there's some nice techniques in it. I slipped when I put the last one down in. So let's add more.
So it does do
the
longest trains are the best parts of any train.
Yeah. Let's delete those ones off the end first. Will it be able to pull that using just physics? I don't know. That might be too many. That actually might be too many.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see.
Oh, this is tense.
So I'm struggling.
Oh, go on, little train.
Now the fun thing is, I think you'll come back around and the end will still be there. Like you'll be sort of slowly catching up with the end of the train. Let's see how long.
It's so long.
See if we can get it all onto the screen at the same time. Pulling. I find this I work for Media Molecule and I help make dreams.
That you do.
I find the fact the physics in this game can run this boggles my mind. A big shout out to Anton, our physics coder, who must have been pulling his hair out when people like me come up and go, "Hey Anton, could I make a train that's like 100 carriages along that runs entirely on physics and goes around a train track, which is also based entirely on physics?" There you go, there's the end. I caught the end up. Choo-choo!
Look at it!
That is one big train.
Tat was asking, do the switches would work on the cars, wouldn't they? Because they would just be following the...
Absolutely. So they work going one way at the moment, and they just don't work the other way because I haven't there's one tiny bit of logic which I've just got to add on the carriages, because these are actually much older than these, and I built these before I did the switch logic, and it's basically I've got to put a key on here which says I'm currently going for a switch, which they don't, so they won't work today, but yeah, absolutely, like they would work how you imagine. If you're reversing, if any part of your train's over there, you press it, so on and so forth. Okay,
right.
So today, let's make a piece. So I was thinking for my game at some point, what I really want is people to be able to make like automated train sets, with like switches that are sort of moving automatically based on conditions and like stop-go signals, picking up cargo.
Yeah.
Now, lots of train games, they have a thing where they look down a section of track and they decide if there's another train in a piece of track, and then they sort of stop you going into that track so there isn't crashes and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool.
Now, we could do that, but the logic for it would be quite extreme. I mean, you'd have to have at least a trigger zone and at least a key in each bit of track to send signals down and communicate with each other, which I think will be prohibitively expensive for what I want to make.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and keep things really simple, and I'm just going to make a piece of track which essentially has a button on it, like a physical button, that when the train goes over, you can then wire that button into something like the direction of a switch or a stop-go signal or something like that.
Right.
And then I can make puzzles where you've got to figure out how to drive over the switch at the right time in the right order to make sure your trains will, either not crash into each other or go the right way and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be fun to make that because it uses a bit of plastic and a bit of wood, so we can sort of do that, and it will show my sort of process of how I do stuff.
How you bring a piece together.
So first, I will need the move controllers. I'm not sure what this is going to do to the cameras.
So I believe John is now only going to become 2 PlayStation Move lights.
Is that true?
I think so. I think it looks like you're just a dancing couple.
Let's try it. Here we go.
Oh no!
Right.
It's the whole string's disappeared.
Yeah, I'm back.
There you are.
Oh, thank God.
We're good.
I'm back.
We're good.
I'm back.
No
okay.
one worry. Absolutely everything is fine. John is now just 2 PlayStation.
I'm just 2 balls sick. My eyes.
Which is fun because now everyone's seeing what the camera sees.
Ah, yes, that's true.
Like, this is how the PlayStation camera picks up the moves.
Yeah. Oh, you may have noticed I've got this incredibly flat floor here, which has no flecks in it. Ooh, smooth. If anyone's wondering how to do that, it's ridiculously cheap. It's just quite literally 1 fleck that I stamped down using paint mode. 1. And then just scaled it up and then turned the impasto to as low down as it goes, and it makes a very, very nice, super smooth floor. So if anyone wants a ridiculously smooth floor, the problem is it has no collision, so that's why underneath there's there's a hidden bit of collision there, basically.
Nice, yeah.
But yeah, just pro tip: if anyone wants a super, super, super smooth bit of floor, that's a really handy way of doing it, and it still gets all the reflections, so it's better than using a text gadget for this kind of thing because it's super smooth.
1 fleck.
Right, let's do this.
All you need is 1 fleck.
1 fleck is all you need. I think the switch, what size should it be? I think that's a bit small, that piece of track there, because I want it to be in the grid system. I think it should be the size of this one over here, basically. That's a little bit bigger than that. That gives enough room to put the little bit of plastic in there. So that's the size I'm going to go for. So let's do it.
Nice.
So let's go into Sculpt mode.
Skinny Chad says his notebook's full and they're only 30 minutes in.
30 minutes, that's good. I know I have no concept of time at the moment.
I don't think any of us do.
So I'm setting the grid at the right size here. I've done everything on a grid size 1 initially, which means that everything will fit nicely together. If you don't do that, it means that when you come to do the align to grid scale thing, it can sometimes scale up or scale down and you get problems with grid. So if you make it grid size 1, you'll see when I grab it, there we go, and if I scale it up to this size using the reset grid, I'll make sure the grid is on space. Now I can start building, because if I started building at this size and getting everything the right size and I did the resize to grid, it would go to that. So make sure you resize to grid first on the default grid size that you want. The coarser, the better. I just went for 1 because it was easy, but yeah, the more coarse, the better it is. Okay, so I've just stamped the block down. This is just to make sure that everything was on the grid nicely. But now I'm going to actually make the item. So let's get our reference piece over here. It's handy to use mirror in this particular case for obvious reasons. So when I'm in there, let's turn mirror on. And I'm just going to start building over here. I know I can delete that cube later, so that was just there to get us going. Yeah. So I now know that I need to bring the grid size down for what I want. Again, just grab that corner, and let's make it the right colour to begin with. No point making it hard work for ourselves. That'd just be silly. One thing I often do, especially when using grid stuff, is I just stamp it down any old ware to begin with, and then use the stretch tool to get it to the right size. I won't be trying to get it into the exact right shape to begin with. It's just much easier to like put it down and then work on it than it is to like try and exactly, you'll be there for ages and you'll miss, just don't make so much work for yourself. It'd just be hard. Now you notice that with this, everything's like got that slightly rounded effect, because wood, it gets rounded just for use, but also toy manufacturers don't want kids to get splinters in the hand, so I wanted everything to be nicely rounded. And the way you do that is just when you're sort of cutting away, just always like turn on like a little bit of soft blend, and then it will just round all your cuts when you're doing them, which is really good. Right, what I want to do is before I do the cut down on top, I want to get all the shapes exactly what I want. So then when I do one big rounded cut on the top, it will make everything nice and neat. So let's do the rails. I know that I need a 1/8 grid for that because I've done quite a few of these now. So there we go, get it to that size. Again, I've just stuck it in. I didn't bother trying to make a really long piece to begin with. Just get it in there first, and then you can do this. Especially if you've got a reference piece, it's really easy.
Man,
so I can
that's fine.
Down to the reference piece, and then I can just copy that one to the reference piece. Okay, cool. So I've got those. Right, now I need these end bits. So what I want to do is, before I put those end ones in, you've got to sort of think about when the roundiness happens. If I put this end notch on here, the circle, the peg, whatever you want to call it, the male part, I wouldn't be able to nicely round this end off, so I know that I definitely want to do this rounding technique first before that end. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I get that back to the right size, and I just put like a little bit around this on, not too much. That there's good. And the same goes for this end. So there you go, you can see how I'm in there. Great. Right. Now I want to build that peg at the end. So positive. It's really handy when you've got a reference. It took a while to get all these sizes worked out to begin with, but once you've got one, it's very easy to get the others. I'm intentionally going to scale bigger, so when I do the final cut later, it will make it all very nice and neat. And one in the middle there. That size, there we go. Just hide the reference for a second so I can grab it and put that. Again, you don't have to be neat on the vertical part of it. And then finally, there's a hole in this end. Now, one thing with the circle, it scales up in like powers, and sometimes like that's too small and that's too big for the size of the pin I want. So the technique I've done on this, and this is why it's important to do the round on the top later, is you can find the hole that's in there, get it to the right size, and if you use the softness, you can actually like make the circle bigger, a negative cut anyway. So all I've got to do is do a soft cut like that, scale that down, and then perhaps even duplicate it, and you'll see that now it's slightly bigger than what that circle is. They were essentially the same size. I cut a hole out the same size as that one, but because I put the soft blend on. But the top is now too soft, you see. That's what I didn't want, so to speak. And this is why it's important that we had everything higher than the track, because now I get to do the just chop off the whole top, and then I can set the soft blend to what I want it to be. So you can just turn it in, turn it down. You just get it to where you want.
That makes sense.
I realise I've got to do the edges as well, so, and this little bit, a few bits. I'm going too fast, John. Slow down. Okay. Sorry about all the grid clicky sounds. I should have probably turned off the UI sounds.
It's always just very fast. It's very soothing, the UI sounds.
Get that one in there. Down it goes. And then we need those edges brought in. So let's get those edges.
Yeah, everyone's saying the clicking is very satisfying and therapeutic. I agree.
Okay, well, that's good.
Mr. K asks, could you please tell us what shortcuts are being used when sculpting?
Sure, I would do my best to do so. Yeah, absolutely. Now I want the switch in here, and again, because I want that same roundedness that I've done here, I'm going to put that hole in there now. So, because it's like a toy and everything's like got that sort of slightly rounded thing, I'm going to use the rounded cube to do this because it will make a much more satisfying hole shape. And what I'm going to do is actually, when I do something like this, to make sure that later when I build the switch to go into it, I don't have to like move it by this small amount. A bit like what I said earlier, always use the coarsest grid you can, and it will mean that stuff will just line up so much better later for you. Like, there's no point using a really fine grid, because the only thing that can fit on a fine grid is something else on a fine grid. So, but a coarse grid, stuff that you make smaller will then still fit on it. You know, it can't go upwards; it can only go downwards. If that makes any sense at all? Probably not.
It does. No, it does. You're all good.
Okay, so I also want. See, now when you do a rounded cube, if you stretch it, you'll notice that the sort of corner gets stretched. It's not like a nice, well, I mean, nice is subjective. It's not, you can see it's elongated, so the curve goes from there to there instead of like a sort of equidistant, like cutout of a circle. And sometimes that's cool, sometimes it's not. So like, I'll look at that and go, is that cool? Or would I prefer like that kind of hole? Does that make sense? Yeah. So with rounded cubes, you either have the multi-clone like that, and I'm like, does that look better? Or does stretched one look better? They both have like a slightly different appeal. I think in this case, stretched actually works because the train on this, the idea for this is the train's going to come over and push the button down into it. So I think having like a slow build up kind of makes sense. Yeah. So I'm going to go with stretched like that. And that is essentially my track done. Now I can chop off the top in shape anyway. When you do this soft blend as well, don't forget if you've got mirror on, it will give you twice as much soft blend because you've got two shapes here, unless you either clip the mirror or turn mirror off. So I'm just going to clip it because that's going to make it a bit easier for me. And let's turn the reference back on. There we go. And a little bit of soft blend, not too much. Up there, and one on the underneath. There we go. Okay, so I now have, and I can also go in and delete that awful monstrosity that was over there. Okay, so I now have my 2 bits of track. And now this will just fit into any other piece of track that's the same size nicely, and it will work on grid, which is obviously what you want in a scenario like this. So you can
get that smooth, and
it will work on the at least the grid you started on. This is why it will work on this grid and any grid below. Obviously with 16th, it just takes longer to like move it into place, and it's like, oh no, it's a pain. It's much easier for yourself if you've got it on the coarsest thing, because then it's very easy to line up. But it may not work on the grid size above, depending how lucky or not lucky you are. So it does work on a 2, but it might not work on a 4. Oh, it does work on a 4. There you go. Hooray! Anyway,
surprising yourself, John.
If I'd done that with the smaller shape here, it probably wouldn't have worked on a 2 and a 4, you see. I just happen to have got one it's probably the half one or something like that. So it's anyway, I digress. Let's now make it look nice and wood texture.
Tab has asked, do you make each piece from scratch instead of cloning and then adding an extra, or did you just do that for demonstration?
No, I always make them all from scratch, only because there's too much detail on here now. I can't really work on this one without making it look weird, and it doesn't save me any graphics thermometer. And it probably doesn't save me time, the effort it would take for me to do, like, chop this and stuff around. Plus, if I did, like, just chop the end off, this bit of grain would still be the same, and you would start seeing repeated grains. So I've done my best to make everything as unique as possible to get that realistic. You know, there's not many repeated grains like here. You can see a repeated grain, and that's mirror it upside down on itself, and then you've got the other side. So even though that's the same piece, you get 2 bits of grain. So I've done my best to make it unique as much as I can without compromising on the thermometer. Also, a pro tip: if you're working on something and you've mirrored it like I've done here, when you're with the thermometer, there's always a trade-off between graphics and gameplay. And it's really cool. You can actually trade graphics by, for example, if I turn mirror off and I literally chop this thing in half, and this is going to look rubbish, it's just to sort of demonstrate a point, and then mirror it like that, I've essentially got the same bit of track. I've got a line down the middle, which will actually work on something because it will look like a mould line. It's cool. That's almost half the graphics budget it was before. You've got to pay the little bit for the flecks that are in that join, but it's almost half, but it's now twice as much gameplay. So you can actually trade one of these for the other. It doesn't have to be with mirrors like this, but you can have more unique sculpts and bigger unique sculpts, and it fills this one up, or you can like make it out of smaller things and this one goes up. And my tip is to always sort of try and keep them level as you're building like a whole level. This is slightly higher because I've been throwing like every single piece in here, and the idea is you can max out a train track and fill it up and the graphics will still be down here. But as you're going, as you're sort of making your level, try and keep those two level. Try and trade one thing off for another. You know, think about, you know, what the benefits are to having a whole sculpt versus a sculpt split in two and stuff like that. Right, let's make it look like wood. So for that, we'll turn the grid off. This is. I've got some cool techniques for this. Annoyingly, because there's a big hole in it, you won't see some of them so much. But let's do it anyway. So the first thing I do is go to paint. I then choose a colour, which is the starting colour, which I've already got selected here, which I pull down here, and then a darker colour, and then kind of just set that randomly spinning, something like that. Yeah. And you'll see I've got that flashing there. Now, a tree, if you think about it, is if you sort of chop it in half, everyone knows there's the rings, you know, like how you age a tree because of the yearly cycles. So the best thing to do when making a bit of wood is think about the tree that this bit of wood came from. So let's make the rings. So if I get a ring here, and you can just about see that, do that, and you put a tiny bit of soft blend, all I'm going to do is like scale up that circle, like that, and keep stamping it. And you can see I start getting the wood grain pattern, which is natural to this. And if you don't like it, you sort of start again. So let's make that a bit darker so we can see it a bit better. So I'm just going to add the darker colour in there to make it more obvious what I'm doing. Shrink it down again. So you put it so it passes right the way through, and spray, enlarge, put a soft blend, spray, enlarge, spray, enlarge. Turn off the soft blend a little bit so you see it a bit more. And the cool thing about this particular technique is it gives you what the actual grain would look like on the end of the wood, which is really hard to visualize because it's actually a circle that's going through, and it will give you a different pattern on the other side to what's on the top. So now I've got the sort of guideline for my wood, and I've already now got some texture on it. I want to now go into smear, the curve shape, turn on some surface snap, sorry. And now the grain in beech wood, if you go and look at it, or ash, things like that, it often it has lots of little black flecks in it. So if you choose the base colour like we did before, and then quite a dark colour, and then I want to spin this as fast as I can spin it. So 1, 2, 3, there we go. So now I'm just going to like follow these lines that I did, like that, and you see it does that like dots. Yeah. Which is kind of like what real wood does. It's not just smooth lines. I mean, pine is kind of pretty smooth, but like beech wood and hardwoods, they have these. So let's just, and I'm just using those lines that I put on earlier as a guideline to draw my grain.
Someone says, would it be possible to do this across multiple pieces to suggest they're from the same log?
Yeah, I mean, technically you could make a bit of wood and then sort of cut it out, but it would be a bit tricky. I mean, it's probably not worth the effort, and I don't think the human eye would sort of pick up on that detail, so to speak. Unless you're making like a puzzle box and it's very intentional, and then, you know, go ahead. And I'm just following those guides I made, taking a few artistic liberties while I go. So hopefully when I release this kit, people will be able to then make a load of awesome pieces, which will be so spectacular. And I'm just turning on the studio lighting so I can do the underneath. It might be a bit horrible for everyone to see at the moment. I apologise. I'll do this bit pretty quickly. Yeah, I don't like doing the underneath. It's always so meh. Okay, like that. And this is actually, because I'm not painting now, I'm actually putting texture in, which is really cool, because it means then when you look at it and catch it in the light, you're actually going to get all the sort of the specular shining off it, you know, which is fun. Okay, we're almost there. Something like that. Okay, you can still see it doesn't look as good as this piece though, so what I need to do for that, let's turn the light back on, is choose an appropriate material for it. So if I go in and grab this one and just pull it out, so it's next to it, so I can get both of the sculpts, multi-select them.
Yeah.
I can make them be the same by just altering the right one of its previous settings, you see. So I'm just basically like cloning over its settings here just by tweaking, just nudging the settings a little bit like that. And there we go. Okay, so now it has the same settings as this would almost, apart from the style mode. I find for wood this one works best, expressive. So let's put that on there, and then comb it in the direction that you think the grain would be going, which clearly would be sort of going down this way like this. We're getting close now, really close. And then lastly, now this is really fun, I really like this, is on, if you go back into sculpt mode, one of the options is looseness, because you can do varying looseness on inside a sculpt, so I can make that bit over there really loose, you see. So what you want to do is choose the sort of empty spaces, which is kind of annoying because we don't really have one due to the switch, but I'm just going to soft blend a bit of looseness in some of the larger flat areas in the middle to add that sort of grainy variance. Like this. There. Just soft blend it as much as I can. Try and keep it sharp near the edges, because then it looks like it's... Now the best thing about this is this actually makes it cheaper, because it's like using less memory, so it makes it look better and cheaper. I mean, it's just a win-win.
It's a win-win. That's what I was going to say. It's a win-win.
Win-win. So you can see that's what I've done on this. You can see how it's looser in the middle than it is at the edge here. See, if I go into it, you can see how I've basically done that along there. It works better on this one. So you can see how that then brings that grain out. So do that. And if you want the grain to be a bit more, just make sure you change that secondary colour that's on here. So on the second page, you can just like make that a bit darker if you want the grain to be more visible. Fiddle around with it until you're happy. Okay, wicked. We now have our bit of track. Shall we see if a train goes over it? Because it might not go over it at the moment.
Yeah.
So let's just test it. So where did those bits of track over there go? Did I delete them? I must have deleted them earlier. Silly John. Oh, it's when I was demonstrating the grid, wasn't it? And go down to grid 1. There we go. Okay, and that should have been a...
Oh, it's so satisfying when they all connect together.
So there we go. Fill that in. Let's see if the train goes over it. Oh, no. Oh, there's the train.
Oh, where is the train?
There's the train. Halfway through.
Mid-air.
Mid-air train, like all good trains. So because there's a giant hole in the middle, the train might not like it very much, but we shall see. Oh, and they've disappeared. Where did they go? Where did they go, John? Oh, it's because I multi-selected it with the... They're under the ground, aren't they, John? Yes!
Ah, John.
Ah, what am I doing? Noob. Okay, let's do that again. Boop, boop. Okay. And let's see, are they going to work? No. So...
No.
That might be because that might be because I have not selected it to be the right material type or label. So on these things I've got labels over here, and I've been using these labels to make the physics work nicely. So you don't have to know which one I've selected. I just arbitrarily selected machine to work with certain things on the train, which I'll show you actually how that works in a bit. So all I've got to do is copy these to be the same. So let's copy all of them. Multi-select, Let's go to collides with and make sure it doesn't collide with machine, and make sure it is labelled scenery. Okay, let's see if that's made things better.
Scenery.
Almost, except now the holes in it really are causing an
look
issue.
at that. Oh, no.
So it almost works. It almost works, but those holes. In fact, let's just test it as the holes just by very quickly deleting that hole just to see, because it may not have. Oh, you know what it is? It's not even a hole, John.
What is it, John?
I'm forgetting the most obvious thing here, John.
John,
I'm very silly. What am I doing? I haven't even put the monorail on, have I, John? Because
John,
that's what I need. I know.
What are you doing, John?
I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Oh, John.
I haven't had to build these fast yet. Anyway,
John.
Let's get you out of you, as it were, and put you in you. Does any of that make sense? There we go. Okay, so now we have a monorail on it. Maybe it will work this time. Let's try, because it might not have been the hole at all. Let's try that. Oh, wait, what? How did?
What happened there? Where's it gone?
I know, it's because I stuck an invisible thing inside a group that was visible, and it decided that
it's like,
it wanted to copy that settings. Yeah. Okay, one more time. We will get there. Okay, now annoyingly I've made the monorail visible. So, John, what? It's also altered because I. Okay, one more time. Rewind. It's because so to explain what happened there. As I pulled that out of there and put it into here, it inherited the properties of each other, which was not what I wanted at all.
Right. So
what I'm going to do is, because this is already a group over here, I'm going to put it inside this group that I know works.
Interpack out says, don't worry, John, all new players make mistakes.
It's true, it's true. One day I'll be a pro.
Yeah, man.
So
we'll get you there,
Let's see if that works. So now I've copied into a group that we know works. There we go. Okay, good. We're back on track.
Nice. Hey, he said it. He said it.
Oh god, I was waiting for that one.
Groan.
Right, groan. Okay, cool. Yay! And you can see it's actually wobbling the trains a little bit, which is definitely now it is those holes that are causing it. So to explain very quickly how this train works, I lift it in here.
Okay.
There's these two little balls on the outside. There's 4 of them technically, and they are the ones that are colliding with the monorail, but they don't collide with anything else, only the monorail. So they're sort of like actually buried down under the track, so they give a nice stable sort of bit of friction there. And these ones on the underneath are actually colliding with the physical track. You can see the wooden track, so that's why the holes are affecting them. You can see that they would just about avoid the holes. It's not one of the holy ones, John. Here's one of the holy ones. You can see how they probably just about travel over the hole, but not quite. They're like skirting on that edge, you see.
Yeah.
Anyway, in that sort of case, what you've got to do is a bit like what I've done with this switch, is you then put like an invisible bit of collision that's below, which the balls can run nicely over, because obviously on the top of this, if it was just running on the physics of this, there's holes all over the place. It'd be a mess. It'd be derailments.
A nightmare.
Commuters would be late.
Oh my goodness!
I can't even.
Wouldn't get where it's going.
Yeah, it wouldn't get where it's going.
Disaster.
So basically, it just runs around, and they've got 0 friction, as you imagine. The wheels, which you've all seen, kind of like nicely roll as it goes.
Yeah.
They're actually there's a tiny bit of logic in there, which is that's all the logic of the train plus the cameras and stuff. But there's basically a movement sensor there, and that's just going off to somewhere. One of these is like the wheel, and saying spin the wheel. And the wheels aren't collidable at all. They're just physical decorations, basically. That's about it. Okay, cool. So now we want to put our little magic switch in the middle. How are we doing for time, Tom?
We're good. We can finish it. We can finish up the piece. Let's finish up the piece.
Yes. Let's do it. Okay, so
there were questions about how you made your extendable piece earlier.
Oh, okay. Let's quick. That's really easy to quickly go over, because that's just over. Which one is it? It's 10. Logic on which side is this one? Okay, cool. So it's really, really simple. The logic is that it's barely anything. all I'm doing is keyframing the position. There's 3 pieces it's made of. Can you see? 1, 2, 3, and it's just literally keyframing between this position and this position. But there's one in the middle which is turning on the visibility. You'll see it turn off there. See it turn on, turn off,
Yes.
turn on.
Yeah.
You can just about see it. Just
there,
fill in that
there.
gap. And you can see this. It doesn't look great when it's moving, but once it's frozen in place, you don't notice that seam at all.
Yeah.
And the 3 pieces themselves, if I go in and pull them out, is like that piece, and that piece. And that's
Nice.
it's really simple. It's often the simplest thing is the best thing.
Okay.
And things don't have to be complicated. That's just to
They
make sure
don't.
that when you start doing all these 45-degree stuff, it lines up. Over here, in fact, was the first test, where I was just like, let's throw in as many random curves as I can. And then when it got to here, it just needed it needed the extension bit, so you can make a nice neat track. But if you stick to 90 degrees, you never need that. It's only if you start throwing in 45 degrees and other such nonsense. Right, let's add the switch over here. So back to the grid. Let's choose a nice. So you'll notice I've actually painted this plastic here. I've put a nice bits of brown on. I've actually got this one I haven't painted. I can tell now that the old one hasn't updated. I haven't put new ones in. So I've actually got a base colour here, but I often, to make sure I've saved a particular colour that I want, I sometimes save base colour items. So where is it? Over here, come on, there it is. So that's just my colour. I can bring it into a level just to, it's like my palette, my custom palette. So if you've ever got a colour you're using or something like that, or a texture, save it out as a little sort of reminder block, and you can bring it in and then copy from it.
Yeah. Okay, that's nice.
So sculpt, get the colour over there, stamp that down, grid size it to make sure it's definitely on the right grid that we want. In fact, make sure the grid is correct, and yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's put that out of the way for a second, and turn mirror on, make sure we're aligned the right way. Yes, and let's make the shape. Now this should be a very simple one to do. So I should just have to sort of get it about there, make it smaller than the hole. Okay, yeah, there's good. It's actually the exact same size as the hole at the moment, so I'll fix that a bit. Turn the grid to the appropriate size. There we go. And then raise it up enough so that the train's gonna hit on it. That's a bit too much. That's somewhere. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, now to make it sort of fit in this hole correctly, because at the moment it's the exact same size as the hole. It'd be a bit tight. It wouldn't go down nicely. So these are the sort of important things you've got to do. So I'm just going to go near the edge and turn on soft blend a little bit. There you go. Can you see how I'm shrinking the sides in just a little bit?
Yep. Ever so slightly, yeah.
Ever so slightly. Shrink those sides. And the back's already good. And the front needs a little bit of zoom in. There we go. Not so much. About there. And then I also need the slope at the front and back that it's going to, because the train, if it hit that, it's doof. It's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So let's get a triangle, make a nice gentle slope. And then put that on there. There we go. And soft blend that because it's kind of plastic, so I want it to have that sort of nice soft look to it.
Yeah.
And about there. There we go. I say about there, you should be doing this perfectly on grid, but I'm kind of zipping along at the moment. So that's going to be my switch. I may just slice the top off a little bit as well. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
There we go. Oh, yeah. That's nice. Okay. Now the switch obviously is probably going right through the floor at the moment, so I'm going to chop it because I'm going to put probably a switch on both sides. I'll just do it one side today, but later, so it's again multi-use. So I'm just going to get the cut out, and I'm just going to cut it out just below the surface. I know you can't see what I just did then, but you can see I've just...
JC asks, is it easier to use the grid if you change your grab point to the middle rather than the outside?
It's a good question.
However you feel, right?
Kind of, yes.
Kind of.
And no. There's a reason I grab it in the middle a lot. is because if you grab from the edge, it scales up from that edge. So if you look at, let's make the grid a bit coarser so we can see it.
Oh yeah.
If I'm grabbing on the side here, you can see how it, as I scale up one, it scales up one sort of to over there if it's going to stay on the grid.
Yes.
But then as I move around, I'm just on those grid points. So if I'm, like, say, arbitrary there, this side's always going to be, like, off the grid. It's like, why would it go on the grid? It's so annoying.
Yeah, okay.
But if you're in the middle, even though it's, like, off the grid, the middle is always on the grid, if that makes sense. So you can always line up things. It's almost always better to do stuff from the middle, especially when circles and things like that are concerned, than it is to try and grab things at the side. Right. But again, my most important tip is use the most coarse grid you can and then change it. And don't forget later, even if something was off the grid, so say you had something small like... grab it. There we go.
We'll need to do a stream on the grid.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Your top tips.
Top tips on the grid. Don't forget that you can actually grab the edges and press triangle while you're holding this, and it puts stuff back onto the grid. You know, if something's off the grid, you can, even while holding this, you can snap those edges. So that's why I often stamp down a small thing and then move it to the grid that I want, as opposed to trying to get it right beforehand. Okay, let's get rid of you, don't need to exist anymore. Now let's make it look a bit more like plastic. Let's put some cool details in there. So this is kind of like artistic choice at this point. What I like to do is maybe put like a little cutout in it that's kind of like soft blend it a little bit. Something like that. So kind of just, I don't know what it is about that, but it kind of looks more plasticky to me when it's got like fake details. I don't know, call me mad.
It's almost like where you see logos and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And then they often have injection molding points as well, which is a fancy way of saying there's some little circles that are kind of often like just visible on the surface. So if you just soft blend a circle near the surface like this in like two fairly random locations, because the tools that make this, the sort of the big molds that they inject stuff into, they're often in the right place that the pipes and stuff can get into, but not necessarily the right place to be symmetrical on the model, because you're not really supposed to see them. They're not actually supposed to be detailed, but it makes it look like it's plastic, you see.
Looks real.
Now though, this is my favourite technique. Time to make the mold line, and this works no matter how complicated your shape is, but make sure you finish your shape first, because this is like a one-way. You do this at the end, and it's hard to like do anything else. So turn mirror on, make sure it's clipped to mirror, take your block over into the side that is in the clip side. It still exists over here, even though you can't see it. Scale it up so it is bigger than your thing, and then just start turning on soft blend. Okay, moves into the view. Okay, so I'm just going to start turning up soft blend. Look, soft blend. There we go, and see the line appears.
Yeah.
So just make sure that line appears a bit. Now this is with soft blend, right? So you do soft blend first. Now you turn over to hard blend, because hard blend gives you a much more defined one, but you just make it very small. It takes a little bit of there we go, stamp, and then you've got a nice bit of plastic. But to make sure it looks really plastic, my favourite setting for plastic is 40, 15 on waxiness. It lets the light sort of transloop through it a little bit. Then I'm just going to make it look a little bit dirty, so into paint mode, because you can't have like, it can't be brand new plastic. You know, this is a well loved toy. This is content. So
no, definitely, I agree.
Get your mode, soft blend out your dirt like that. Turn down the opacity a bit. Just kind of put some in those holes like this. Bit over here. Then put like a big bit there, but like very soft, something like that. Maybe over here. Go back out. Well, not go back out, but grab that colour. So now I've got the nice shiny blue again.
Yep.
put that in the middle, because you've got to think about where it would rub, basically. So the dirt wouldn't be in the middle of those holes because they would actually get rubbed. The top of this train, the whole thing gets rubbed as the train goes over the top, so make sure they're shiny there. The middle probably gets the dirty fingers and whatnot in there. So. Then add a few scratches.
You're adding lore to your train set.
Adding lore, yeah, it's really important actually. You've got to put yourself in its position and imagine what's going on. So as the train's going over, it's scratching off like this, because it's scratching into it. Now when you scratch plastic, of course, it doesn't leave a dark mark. It actually leaves the mark of the plastic, because it's that bluey colour all the way through. So I'm actually scratching with that same blue colour. But some scratches get dirt inside them, so older scratches choose a dirty colour, but they're often smaller. Maybe a bit less opacity because they alias a little bit, and then just throw a few scratches around like that. You can hardly see them, but they are there, trust me. It makes it so much more believable. There we go. The big ones. They look a bit too mirrored. There we go. Wicked. So now we have our button. And the idea is that will go like as the train goes over it. And I think have we got like 5 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ace.
Of course.
I'll quickly do that. So make sure that's in the correct group. So we've got that, and grab that and put you in new. Okay, so yeah, great. So let's get a microchip to do this bit of logic. And I may think about how to make this cheaper later, but for now, it's going to be totally fine to just use a keyframe, a microchip, save it there for later use. Let's get a keyframe and just keyframe that thing going down. We could use physics, but I'm going to try a keyframe first because it's probably going to be more reliable.
Right.
Not the whole thing, John, just that. There we go. So. It's all the way down. In fact, it probably wouldn't go all the way down because the train isn't touching the ground, so that's actually probably where it should be. So we now got it going down. So just put a bit of delay on this. Something like 5 seconds. Not 5 seconds. 0.5 seconds. It's often best to do things the cheapest way. Like I could have used like a timer and all kinds of stuff, but often just use the blend on here. Unless it's going to be something you're going to see lots of or be really close to. Just do that and it should be fine. Now I just need a key that's looking for the train. So let's get a key and we name it train. I happen to know that there's a trigger zone on the train called train. So I'm going to get 2 of them because I want to make sure there's one at one end. Make the grid course. Again, always try and make that grid course. Put that key onto the grid and in the middle of the track, and the other one also, but down the other end. And this may need adjusting, but let's go with that for now. And so if either of these keys is triggered, this thing goes down, and let's just make it not collidable as well. So it's not going to cause us any problems. And let's just see if it works.
Fingers crossed, I'm sure it will.
Controls down. You might not even see it actually. You might have to change the camera angle, but we go over it, and there you go. It goes down, and the cargo is obviously not detecting because I don't have that same thing I was mentioned earlier. So it's just
it's so good.
Someone asked about the camera setup I have. It's basically this thing, which is a follower. Ignore that. That's not actually doing it. Oh no, it's zooming in the camera. But it's basically a follower that follows the train, but looks at that key there. Can you see? There's a key there. Called center. It just tries to look at that. That's it, and follow the train, and that's all it does. But because of that, I can just tunnel into that camera, not that camera, that camera, and I can just lower it down like this. Okay, let me get a bit closer.
Get in there.
So then we can get a nice close up of the train as it goes over that switch. Bit of view.
Amazing.
Boop, boop.
Boop, boop, boop. Down it goes.
Down, up, down,
Boom,
up.
boom, boom.
There we go. And so later, my plan is that will, I'll wire that into a switch. I'll set up a bit of logic, which is like there's an input here, and if that goes into that switch, that will make the switch turn, or make the traffic signal go, or whatever else. Yeah,
it will do a thing.
It will do a thing, absolutely, Tom. It will do.
Oh, amazing!
So that is John Beech's patented train set.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Why Ledbetter asks, can you teach us how to make the perfect carbonara?
Maybe. I quite like cooking.
And that's for another stream.
Definitely another stream. I'm not sure we can do it in the time we've got.
No, yeah. We should, when we're back to normality, we should do a stream of Capano and just showing us how to
Oh my god, that'd be so good. Capano,
that'd be so
amazing.
Fun. That'd be so lovely. Can you imagine?
It'd be the most wholesome stream we've ever done.
Nice.
And it's not like we don't do wholesome streams, but they would be like wholesome level times a million.
It'd be ridiculous. Be the embodiment. Yeah, and but a lot of people asking if this is released. Not yet. John's got a bunch more ideas for it. But he will in the future.
Absolutely. As soon as I get it to a point where I'm sort of happy with it, that it can go out into the wild and there's not loads of bugs and stuff. And I've made a couple of levels for it myself, so I get to have a bit of fun with it, as it were. I will release it out, and people can make all their own trains. And the idea is that I would love it if people made levels for it, courses, whatever, experiences. Let me know about them, and if they're cool, I'll put them in my the map, the main map of this. And then we just have hours of gameplay, and people can come along and they can check out the toy train map, and it'd be created by me, but curated, and everyone else in the community can make awesome stuff for it, which would be so cool. I'd be so excited.
Terry Tony Thomas says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't even know I was into train sets." Yeah, no,
you are now.
You are. Yeah, we all are now.
Yeah.
John, amazing work. Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you everybody for watching.
Thanks everybody.
Today was Tuesday. We will be back on Thursday for another playing your stuff. So do tune in then. In the meantime, stay safe as always. We love you lots. John, it's all down to you now.
I've got to turn it off. I never had to do this before.
So do you want to press? If you press share.
Yeah. I got it.
Then you'll see it. Then.
Yeah.